a little bit of a surprise. I think more out of respect than anything else. President Barack Obama got a standing ovation as he left a meeting with House Republicans today. Certainly not because of what he said. Like I said, I just think it's out of respect for the office. But basically, those inside the meeting, and we'll talk with Congressman Chris Stewart, who was there today in just a minute, but they're basically saying, look, he reiterated his public stand on the budget and the fact that he says we need a balanced approach, and that means higher taxes and some spending cuts on energy. And this tour that he's trying to take, I don't know if it's achieving much of anything, because it does not appear at this point that he is willing to compromise at all. I mean, he is pushing for more and more taxes, and I think he's lost his leverage there. We'll talk more about that here in just a few minutes. But joining us on our Newsmaker line now is Utah 2nd District Congressman Chris Stewart. Congressman Stewart, welcome back to the show. You were in the meeting today. You heard what the president had to say. What is your assessment of it so far?
Well, we appreciate the president coming down to talk with us. That's obviously important, and frankly, it's been missed. There just hasn't been a great dialogue between the administration and Republicans here on the House for quite a while, for too long now. And so we were grateful that he was willing to come down and talk to us. He spent more than an hour, probably an hour and 15 minutes with us. But I think that it was an opportunity that he didn't take advantage of. Many of us, I think, felt like he was, campaigning still, and he was a great campaigning before, and obviously he won re-election. But he's been campaigning since November 6th, and it just felt like it was a little more of that, and that was disappointing for some of us. Some of his answers and some of the things he said, it was not responsive to, I think, some of our concerns. So I'm glad he came, but wish we would have been able to have maybe a little more positive dialogue than what came out of it.
What would you have liked to have heard, Congressman?
Well, honestly, I would have liked him to just been more honest with us, and I mean on strategic or on tactical things. I just don't feel like he was playing straight with us on a couple things. And let me give you an illustration. One of the great things that drives so many of us right now, I think it's a great battle of this generation, is our debt and our spending. And Rod, you've heard me say that, 100 times?
Yeah.
And so many of us feel that way. And, the president stood up and he said, we have had the greatest deficit reduction in history under my administration. And I don't even know what that means. I mean, we've had a 1.4, a 1.3, a 1.1, and a $1.2 trillion deficit under this administration. What does that even mean? He's had the greatest deficit reduction in history. And you just, as you're sitting there in the audience, I just couldn't help but think, who does he think he's talking to? Does he think that we're going to just accept that on face value? And another illustration was, really this White House tour, I think, where he's closed the White House to tours, is really symbolic to a lot of people. It really is meaningful, much more than I think he anticipated. And he was challenged on that, and he said, well, that wasn't my decision. That was the Secret Service. Well, he's the President of the United States. It's his house. The Secret Service works for him. He clearly has the authority to move funds around in order to keep those White House tours going, and he's chosen not to do that. And now he's taking a little heat for it, and rather than accepting responsibility or saying, maybe we could rethink that, maybe we should open that, he just says, it's the Secret Service's call. Well, again, a lot of us listen to that, and we just think, well, he's not being straight up with us on that.
Yeah.
Wish he would have been.
And that's pretty amazing, Chris, because you're right. I mean, he has the authority to say, no, we are not going to do this, figure out another way to do this, instead of allowing it to go forward and then saying, well, maybe now we can change things. I mean, To me, it just shows how ridiculous that move has been.
Well, and I think he knows it politically. It's backfired on him. I mean, it's the people's house, and people plan trips to Washington, months in advance, years in advance for some families. And if you've gone to the effort to get those tickets, and it's hard to do, and you want to go see the White House, and I think he's making the people pay the price for that to make a political point. And it's such a tiny amount of money in the overall scheme of things. And he's clearly looking for things that affect people, make it painful for them, to take sequestration and make it as painful as he possibly can on as many people as he can, hoping that, public turns against that. But I think just the opposite has happened. I think people have, it's kind of firmed up their resolve. It certainly has with me that this is something that has become clearly too politicized. And I think it's backfired on him.
Do you think, Congressman, that the American people are starting to wake up and see what you're seeing as well?
Well, I do. I do. And I mean, look, everything that we've done for 18 months now has been through the lens of a campaign. And it's been through this filter of people looking at the president who, his basic premise is, I'm going to make your life easier. And I'm going to take care of you, and I'm going to give you this. And we can provide all these services, and it's just, they're essentially free, and we create money in order to pay for it. And the opposite argument, the Governor Romney was making was we have to be responsible, both personally and we have to be responsible as a nation. But, that filter now has been removed. The campaign is over, and now the president has to stand by his policies and stand on his policies. And I think people, with that filter removed, people begin to see it for what it is. And I really think there has been a shift. And it's going to be self-correcting, Rod. I mean, one way or another, it's going to be a correction on this. And I think a lot of people are anticipating, look, let's take this opportunity to try and fix something now. We can't just muddle through for 4 more years like we've done on the last 4. It's too long. It's just too long to not have any progress on some meaningful reforms.
Now, you have introduced a new resolution today, and basically you're doing what? Mr. President, forego the vacation so we can keep the White House open. Is that basically it?
Well, yeah, that's it. And it's symbolic, but it's meaningful. For heaven's sakes, he jaunts down to golf with Tiger Woods, and it costs us a couple $1 million. He goes to Hawaii with his family, and it costs between $4 and $7 million. And he does that all the time. And I'm glad the president gets to go on vacations. None of us want to deny him that opportunity. But here's the deal, like we've been talking about. It costs a total $3.7 million for a year to keep the White House doors open, which is what he'll spend in a weekend on a vacation. Mr. President, keep the White House open for the people, and if that means you have to forego a vacation to do it, that seems like a reasonable thing to do. And hopefully it'll put a little pressure on him to open up the House again.
All right, Congressman Chris Stewart, thank you, Congressman Stewart, for joining us, talking about the